Hello YouTubers, this is the noobifier. Last weekend on the 8th of October we had Citizencon. Everyone should probably know about that right now. But this weekend on the 15th of October, CIG released the full 5-hour 10-minute show. So what I've done, as you know, I make short summaries, and I have made summaries of these little shows. These are in a playlist, but one of my Patreon backers suggested that I try and test creating what we're going to call a SuperCut. This takes the intro and outro off and stacks them back to back in order, fast. Only the information, and this is the video to bookmark and send to anyone for all of 2022 who has any questions about what to expect and what's being worked on. I need feedback. Use thumbs up, thumbs down. Here we go. The panel was hosted by Maximilian Kleitsch, who's the senior environment artist. We began with a live in-engine tour of Pyro, planet to planet. Pyro 1 is being hit constantly by solar flares, and there are fire streaks that are planned to be seen in the atmosphere. What we were shown were placeholder clouds and streaks, and Max said that there would be better ones planned for the future launch. The surface of Pyro 1 is crystalline, and Max said that they pushed the crystals to 11. Plant assets are crazy looking in blue, the ground is blue, the sky is blue, the crystals are blue, everything is blue. It's like Smurf Planet. Pyro 1 will be easy to tell apart from the others. Max said that what we were looking at was incomplete and then took us to one of his favorite locations on Pyro 1. The tabletop rock formations provide cover, and Max said that you could actually land on them and explore them. Pyro 2 is red rock, and with that new river tech that we were shown recently, you can see vertical cliff formations, which are kind of unusual in video games. Max said that there was an ocean, and what we are seeing has less fog and a longer draw distance. What you see is actually there in Star Citizen. Max took us to a biome on Pyro 2 with calcified trees, and it looked dead, despite the high contrast with the clean ocean. Sandy desert, low grasses, small bushes, and visually stunning. Max highlighted improvements in the land textures, saying that with these improvements, they are less reliant on adding stuff on the terrain because the terrain stands up better. Pyro 3 was next, and we've reminded that this is the one that was demoed last year at Citizencon. It looks yellow from space, but that's the moss that covers the surface. Fluffy texture and high density are improved this year. Assets were ramped up to completely cover the surface, and based on what we saw, it looks frickin' awesome. We were then transported to the Pyro 3 coastal biome with dark gray soil, tiny yellow coral, and then that gradually migrates to the yellow moss that we're used to. Pyro 3 has a volcanic biome with thick brown soil, lots of sections with small plants. Pyro 4 is actually Max's favorite. The clouds that were shown were said to be placeholders, custom terrain surface based on a Scottish highland. Pyro 4 has a thick carpet with custom vegetation bespoke only to it. Firestalks, some cacti, and specialized trees. Max spoke about the fidelity of these trees and how they would need to revisit and update the ones that we have in the PU. Max spoke about the detail that they're adding to places that blend two biomes. We were shown a red and gray biome with a massive rock formation and blood red surface. There were some spots below a fog line, and Max noted that there were some stitching issues present in the current model that would be fixed. They are now able to combine many height maps to create huge crater features that can be actually seen from space. Also on Pyro 4 are some dark, dead, creepy areas, hardened lava, red soil, and you would actually need to be suited up to survive here. Pyro 5 has a huge visible streak of obsidian. On the surface, we can really get that sense of scale. It's truly gigantic. Sections of flat mixed in with outcrops. The surface is slick, polished, and shiny. Light bounces off of all the areas, and they've added a couple of rocks and plants. Elsewhere on Pyro 5 is more standard looking, a more desert biome. Less glossy with a more matte finish. The palette was too dark, so they imported some red and brought the sky up with light clouds. Pyro 6 is unique because it's blue, yellow, and beige. The ocean is broken up by craters, really sharp rock formations. The surface looks dusted with a light gray carpet. We could see plants that floated on the waves, and Max introduced a scale player asset to show us how they confirm and check to make sure that what's being made looks correct. This is the second panel, Journey 4.0, Design Brief Investigations. Here's what you need to know. This panel was hosted by Luke Presley and Elliot Maltby, who are Senior Lead Designer and Principal System Designer. The design brief was a rundown of mission types. Missions are custom and hand-built. Cargo drop-off, kill a person, kill a ship. These are the types, but this can evolve by chaining several small missions into one larger one. Investigation is new, and Elliot said that they were really pushing the envelope in its complexity. You start this mission and you become the detective. You need to search for clues and build up the picture of what happened. a real challenge, and if this is done correctly, it'll be super satisfying to complete. Luke said that they're adding fake or misleading clues to throw you off, no breadcrumbs, you get the basic story and a starting location. You will be able to come up to the wrong conclusion, and they begin this by pitching an idea to Chris and Tony. They spoke about a repair office mission with clues that would lead you elsewhere, and when you arrive, you see the technician electrocuted on the item that they were sent to repair. Luke mentioned another mission that would require you to have a certain reputation level before you could begin. These missions include a longer list of sub-objectives that you can track on your mobiGlass. These are being prototyped and built so they can be expanded and modified. Because we're in a multiplayer universe, if you bring a friend or two along, the mission needs to be ready. They can expand the number of sub-objectives to increase the difficulty, and they can add more locations and change up the narrative to tweak the mission. This was the third panel, Journey to 4.0, Journey to the New Underground. Here's what you need to know. The panel was hosted by Ian Leyland, who is the Star Citizen art director. Combat missions are targeted to be about 60 minutes of stuff for you to do. The play area is broken down into zones. Zone 1 is the surface, and there is an easily obvious main building and an obvious landing spot close to it. That area is being built to provide a great FPS area with locations of cover and many bypasses. They're working to add several entry points to mix things up. The main welcome desk asset for the corporate area can be rebranded over and over again to repurpose it. Zone 2 is the access elevator or transit. It's a large elevator that might actually have some rooms or vehicles on it. What was shown in concept was utilitarian, but it could also be rebranded and repurposed. The elevator looked as if it would be able to support even a small or medium ship. Its surface was cluttered with items for cover and concealment. Once that lift is at its lowest place, it opens up to many options for the players to choose. Zone 3 locations are the main part of the location. They are industrial corridors mixed with levels, many paths, and many rooms. These can be explored, and the main corridor will support vehicular traffic. These cargo decks and corridors will not be simplistic. The idea is to offer you many ways to get around. There will be a physical limit to the length of these corridors for economy and to improve the player experience. They're working on the idea of a checkpoint with a break room, an office, and a security checkpoint. This clean break lets the developers change up the repetition. These will be multi-story locations. They're thinking about adding theme rooms. These are larger and feel more like what we already have on some stations. The refinery area and the loading areas, for example. They plan to put a technical mezzanine hovering above that room. They're working on adding Zone 3 rooms with less industrial themes, executive or control areas, map rooms, office spaces, meeting rooms, and data processing. They showed off a data store which is held below the water for cooling like you would expect from a nuclear reactor. And this would add to complexity for some of the missions. They're thinking about adding construction or incomplete areas with all of the tooling and machinery that would be used to tunnel the space out. Overgrowth, adding liquid, adding underground lava, adding acid pools, and then making these in various states of operation or disrepair. He said that the planning and execution of these are done in Engine. Developers can see and tweak the idea and then get things started. That's it. This was the fourth panel, Journey 4.0, the need for speeds. Here's what you need to know. The panel was hosted by, stick with me, David Coulson, Richard Tower, Ged Talbot, Yogi Klatt, Johnny Young, who are the lead vehicle programmer, lead game designer, senior gameplay programmer, and gameplay programmer. With the intent of moving towards a proper balance, they still plan to have ship types that work similarly. Light, medium, heavy. But not all ships are going to fall perfectly into those categories. There will be ships that can blend between them. The regular archetypes, though, are light is fast, medium with turrets and more specialized gear, heavy with armor and weapons, long duration, but perhaps they're sluggish. They spoke a little bit about racers, they spoke somewhat about bombers, they spoke about multiplayer ships, describing the roles exactly how you would expect. No surprises so far. All ships can be seen as special. They need to make this diverse, or we will just fly around in a handful of very good ships. They're working with speed to vary this, and they want to limit jousting. High-speed combat is not the goal. Close and personal was said to be more fun, so being able to project away from the fight all the time, charging up your shields and then coming back is frowned upon. They can't just drop the overall speed, so they need to get creative. They tested soft speed caps, and that did not achieve the goal. The focus in Squadron 42 is good, and they're happy with what's called Master Mode. Master modes are being tested in Squadron 42. These are SCM and Quantum. It was said to be the best of both worlds, with benefits of being in either. SCM is your high mobility mode with full shields and full weapons. Dogfighting. Anything that you need to fight in is limited below 200 meters per second. You can overboost for short periods, but you cannot fly quickly in SCM. Quantum mode unlocks more speed, but you're going to lose all the protection and your weapons. Quantum boost will be new and is meant for very short bursts. 50,000 kilometers or less can be boosted. 1,200 to 1,400 meters per second, or you can boost short, or you can enter conventional long-range quantum. Entering quantum mode, your shields are gone, your weapons are gone, and when you're switching between the two, there's a slight wake-up time where the recharge happens. These systems become enabled and must recharge. They were mentioning a bunch of in-lore reasons why this would happen, including quantum bubbles and fields and all kinds of other things interfering with each other. They're looking into more device types that can exploit these two modes to interdict or stall. They're tweaking and balancing internally, and they feel that the changes are night and day. Fights are closer, fights are deliberate, and they say the multiplayer turrets become even more of a threat. Combat can be kept close, low, and slow, and the high-speed travel is preserved. Sounds interesting to me? That's it. This was the 5th panel, Journey to 4.0, Design Brief, Loreville Redone. Loreville 2.0, or whatever they called it. Here's what you need to know. The panel was hosted by Eric Gagnon, Maxime Guidon, and Ian Leyland, who are the principal concept artist, lead environmental artist, and art director StarCitizen. Loreville is getting a complete facelift, and it's going to look awesome. The panel was a breakdown of what we would see. Loreville was the original large landing space based on a city that the player could fly around. Lessons were learned in building up Area 18, and these lessons are now being applied to Loreville 2.0. Going back to a clean slate, concepts were made and then approved. The scale of the new space was defined and broken down into suburbs with their own little themes. My impression here based on this panel is that Loreville is going to get a massive buff in size, and it will not look like anything that we're used to. Of course, the main familiar buildings are still there and the basic geometry is still there, but it's crazy. They let us know that this was still in white box, but Max had a set of preview shots for us. The L19 and spaceport remain, but the transit system will be expanded to accommodate the larger footprint. This primitive layout was made to visualize before getting it locked down so that work could begin. They're reducing the no-fly zone and then adding overpasses and bridges for players to fly through and amp up the excitement. Landing zones will have the highest textures and the remainder will still look awesome. Max commented that each member of their team have strengths and each are working to create the best Loreville 2.0. That's it. This was the 6th panel, Journey to 4.0 Power Play. Here's what you need to know. The panel was hosted by Dan Truffin and Thorsten Lehman, who are Assistant Design Director PTU and Senior Systems Designer. Resource management is all part of balance. Items will need power, and that power needs to come from somewhere, and it needs to go through something. Fuel makes power, and this power is used in small ships, big ships, small outposts, and huge stations. Everything everywhere will operate the same. They demoed the small ship to give us a proof of concept and offer a disable versus the kill that we have now. The hope is that if you can disable a player's engine and achieve your goal, perhaps you won't need to kill them. Let's see how that plays out, people. I don't know. Managing power will become its own game loop. Things need to be fixed, maintained, and adjusted. You can be Scotty or Geordie LaForge. Blown fuses need to be fixed or everybody dies. Life support will matter, parts will wear out, filtering will need to be changed, temperature will need to be adjusted, perhaps you'll have too many players in one space and the air will start to run out. They continued by speaking about relay gameplay in larger ships. The TLDR is that you can change how the power gets to all the systems. High-ranking players will have more access to all the subsystems. Lower-ranking crew may have some systems delegated or some systems removed. For example, the pilot may be able to control shields and weapons, but might not have access to mess around with the engines. That might be solely controlled by the engineering crew. We were shown an updated scenario where the player can find and repair systems throughout a ship, and I want to remind everyone that the last time we saw this, the task was actually being done by an NPC crew member. So perhaps not everyone wants to get into this level of granularity, so it's nice to be able to task that to an NPC. They ended with some scenarios showing how these can be used to control fires, to control gravity generators, combating sabotage, stopping hacking. Yogi said a lot of progress was made this year and then threw up a slide. So you have interactable and accessible items on all ships, relay gameplay, changing fuses on those relays, resource balancing, defining control groups that'll be accessible through MFDs, allowing people to create presets for your own resource network, an engineering UI with at least a list or schematic view of your ship, and external engineering screens allowing engineers to define the tuning parameters that can be accessed by the pilot, at the press of a button. Thank God for NPCs. Anyways, who knows, to some of you, maybe that's exactly all you want out of Star Citizen, to sit in the bowels of a ship and push buttons. Resource management will change the entire game and allow for meaningful multiplayer gameplay. That's it. This was the 7th panel for the day, talking ships. Here's what you need to know. The panel was hosted by John Crew, Ben Curtis, and Paul Jones, who are the vehicle director, vehicle art director, and art director. They spoke for about 6 minutes about the new Crusader Spirit. I have a detailed overview of that linked up, but quickly, there are 3 of them, C1, A1, E1. C is for cargo, A is normally for attack, but that in Star Citizen means bomber, and E is for executive, for running VIPs around. Reasonably priced between $100 and $150, not flight ready, and no known release date. We're still waiting on a Q&A, and they went on to discuss the upcoming Drake Corsair. It is Drake's multiplayer exploration by force super platform. Remember that the ship has guns, some missiles, and guns. Crew of 4, really good cargo. And it was concepted at 215, which as it turns out compared to some other ships seems quite fine. Its asymmetrical design folds up nicely for landing. We got a quick tour of the ship from front to back. The main flight deck has a central situational awareness display, an MFD on each side, and then a keyboard below left and a third MFD below right. Really does look like it was put together by a young Anakin Skywalker and held together with bubblegum and duct tape. The pilot's view seems okay. The co-pilot sits below on an unnecessarily complicated seating system that begins on the main level, is thrust down with a safety rail that pops up to protect the new hole that's formed. The seat then slides towards the glass, and I would say that this view might be fantastic, especially if there were, guns being aimed towards the ground from here. But they demoed this position operating the top-mounted remote turret, which doesn't really make sense, but whatever. It seems that the main array of 4 gimbaled guns might belong to the pilot. The captain's quarters are mounted directly behind the flight deck. The other crew rooms are similarly outfitted, bare bones, with a locker and a bed. John confirmed that the pair of side-mounted manned turrets can face forward, adding to the already insane frontal firepower. The crew galley is a common space with a picnic table and 3 screens mounted above. There's a closet-sized washroom with a super convenient shitter-shower tiny sink combo. There's a cafeteria-style food service area. Back behind a bulkhead is engineering with the systems and components. Some of them are in their own tiny room. There's an operational room with a kit locker and a side airlock. The mid-mounted lift is trick because it doesn't only go down to the ground like normal, but it can also open the roof and lift up to take you outside as well if you just want to go for a stroll on top. Behind that is the cargo room with space for an Ursa, and it's closed off by a rear ramp. Everything is exposed in this space and it looks very Drake. The team then spoke about the new LTI token, the Greycat STV, a vehicle which I already have a dedicated video on. It's a Jeep. They said it's for racing, topping out at 90 miles per hour. They want to make a UTV, and they also are going to remake the PTV in the future. Fenders, roll cage, gun rack, rubber floor mats, delivering you that feeling of exploring within your new tiny Jeep. John said that it was all around better than the Cyclone RC. They spoke about a poll that we can vote on. John mentioned a new mining ship between the Mole and the Orion, something that can carry a rock, and we get to choose the manufacturer, either RSI, Argo, or MISC. I have the link to the poll in the description. Go exercise your right to vote. That's it. This was the final re-recorded segment, Community Hub Reveal. Here's what you need to know. The panel was hosted by none other than Tyler Widkin, aka Xylo, who is the Director of Community. Xylo introduced what they were trying to achieve with this new section within Spectrum. The community is super creative and they want to give us the best place for us to share our creativity. The company felt the need to push to work with Turbulent to make this new platform, this updated platform. They wanted to make it much easier to filter everything out and find exactly the type of content that you're interested in. So if you're looking for machinima, if you're looking for cosplay, if you're looking for written work, you can find it. A great place to find creative people and interact with them and collaborate. When you're making a post, you have 3 options: audio, video, picture. There are many categories that you can choose from. Your post is uploaded into that category and you can choose up to 5. When you first arrive at this new hub, you're going to be greeted with the top trending page. Twitch streamers are able to link into the hub and you'll be able to see who's streaming live. You can choose to follow a community member and be given alerts when they're active or when they post something. I have it linked in the description. You're going to have a problem. I needed to fully log out and then re-log back in. Don't hesitate to find me there and follow me. I'm going to be using this new feature exactly for what it's intended, and I appreciate any support that I get from you, my valuable viewers. And that's it, nice and short, here's what you need to know. The discussion was between Chris Roberts, CEO, Cloud Imperium Games, and Richard Tyrer, Squadron 42 Senior Director, Cloud Imperium Games. So that would be the guy who's in charge of everything and the guy who's in charge of the thing that we want released. Squadron would be the main development focus, but there would be some discussion about the PU as well, because some of these features are important to both. Chris acknowledged that the quarterly release roadmap always becomes a source of frustration, and he was more happy to discuss progress in this format. Richard said that even when he was tasked the PU team, features were never just made for one or the other game. He explained that the live development is a fun challenge where they would make something, we would break it, showing an issue, and there would always be some lag to improve it, which is unique to this project. So now with the focus on Squadron, the development is testing internally, and when the something is applied to the PU, it's in a better initial state. Not all of the items being made for Squadron are relevant to the PU, but most are. Chris reinforced that point and amplified that the items that are being pushed to the PU now are more refined when we see them. Actor core is anything to do with your character, vehicle core is anything to do with ships and buggies, and the resource core is anything to do with power. There are more cores, but the point of that was that the back end of all of these systems are being made with Squadron and PU in mind. And Chris used the star map as an example. Richard said that the conversation would likely be done in two parts. The first is how features are being developed and how they go together. And second, what they're planning to talk about today were things that were actively being worked on, not hypothetical. Jared mentioned that they have prepared visual examples of most of these things, and they began. Rich was asked about FPS radar, and he said that and the entire player interface is really the most important feature. This is the one thing that we use all the time as a player. Interaction, inner thought, and others are currently lacking, so they're being addressed. Chris spoke about having to be able to lift, inspect, drag, drop, push, stow, use. This interaction and persistence has always been part of his plan. They're tinkering about the future, ensuring that we could use a controller, a mouse, a keyboard. Eventually, all of this control needs to be very easy. They want to simplify how we interact with items and be able to control things without needing a submenu. A quick scan will tag the basics in your augmented reality. If you charge scan, you're going to be trading your location for a much improved readout. We were shown this in a pair of videos. You can see tags on items, but if something can be used, the option simply appears when you get closer without needing any buttons. Push F to action, and then push and hold F will show all the actions available, just like we see in some other games. If you'd like to customize what that default action is, we will be able to define that. They demoed another video which looked a little bit like wall hacking scan with a slight cooldown. Chat really span up. The live chat was split and became very active when they showed this, as it does seem to go against what we were told about the game. They never confirmed that we would see this specific thing outside of Squadron, but they did say that using this action would be a surefire way of being announced. They're working on traversals, action grabbing, and mounting. They would like to disconnect the player view when you're on a ladder. They want to give you the ability to grab a ledge if you've misjudged the jump. They want to give you the ability to jump from the ladder whenever and wherever you want. This type of feature extends into EVA push-pull, and Richard said that they are optimizing all of the default actions to be the one that you most likely need. So if you go up to a screwdriver, the option will be use. If you go up to a piece of food, the option will be eat. Inertia from a push is carried, and if you look in a new direction, you can vector into that direction with another push. Currently we have thrusters on all suits, but it was confirmed that not all suits will have thrust, so you may be limited only to a physical push-pull. We were shown a demo with what was called an Iron Man EVA, where you're flat. Hands are being used to pull along the surface like you would at the bottom of a pool, not feet, and you can look anywhere you like. Use a big push and your momentum is preserved. Richard reminded us that tractors, EVA suits, and physical push-pull are being used all together. In EVA, if you're about to collide into something, the character will automatically brace and then migrate to the best method of locomotion, and there are other variations for these in close-in space. They spoke about hover trolleys and slave pods. In the demo video, the player was able to just walk with this very heavy item using Gravlev. Jared asked about the flight model and ships. Squadron is refining and defining the flight model for the PU. Legacy flash-based MFDs and HUDs have been with us from the start. It became apparent that the old systems don't work well together, and they're going to think about all of these systems working together, what you need to see, where, and based on the situation. The result is less clutter. Chris said that it made more sense that as a pilot flying a Caterpillar, you should not need the same type of information as a fighter pilot flying in a Sabre, and these are all being worked on. They're also revamping how targeting works to offload some of the information to the HUD and reduce clutter. They spoke about scanning ranges, which we have heard about before. They spoke about this using 1/10 quantum boosting for exploration, being able to shoot around. As the pilot, in quantum boosting, you will need to fight to stay on course, which is kind of cool. And Chris then confirmed that your weapons and shields are powered down for this traversal. Jared asked about Minimap. Chris spoke about this new map where we will be able to download a map and then interact with it. It's being made as part of a tool set that can be applied to anywhere, anytime, and show anything. And none of this needs to be hand-drawn by a developer. Maps can be customized based on the roles, so medics might see casualties, an engineer might see subsystems, security might see crew and intruders. Jared asked about AI and enemy. Richard said that the AI that we have in PU has been thrown away, and they started again from scratch for Squadron. They wanted to build simple and then build up. They wanted to build something that works. Chris said that he was happy with the progress with this new AI enemy, a real challenge and a real FPS experience. Richard spoke about all of the challenges associated with making an AI realistic. He said AI have skills and traits associated with who they are. So a security officer may not know how to make a good coffee, but a barista might also not know how to use a weapon. They said that the dynamic conversation system is super immersive and relevant to the story, but this will eventually be migrated into the PU. We were shown a demo of NPC search logic. The two NPCs share info. One was covering the other while it searched. As fewer places were left unchecked, the player was found and the security guard killed the player. They showed that system off again from the player's perspective. We have pushers, strafers, and defenders, and these work together to find, fix, and kill. The makeup of the team is random, the intensity and how they deal with you is random, which should result in variation from your perspective. Jared talked about skills. They're adding skills into Squadron and eventually into the PU. And this is 100% contrary to everything that Chris had said for the past 10 years. So you can imagine what happened to live chat. Star Citizen was not supposed to include a skill buff progression, and I'm still dealing with how I feel this announcement makes me feel about the game. So, they spoke about strength, takedown, stamina, force reactions, swapping weapons, time to ADS, being able to withstand higher G-forces, longer duration in swimming, sprinting, and all of this is based on how strong you are, how agile you are, and these are all things that you can work on. These skills will be cultivated by doing these things over and over again, and then there was something else called a technique. This one makes a little bit more sense, but it still goes against everything that we were told. The example was if I wanted to do a takedown. If I did it the first time, it would be messy. But if I do a takedown over and over again, my technique would be refined and my skill would be done better. I wouldn't have to push the button better. My character would just do a better takedown because I did it more frequently. So better knife fighting, quicker mag changes, and more stealthy sneaking around. You do these things often and you'll be able to do them better than someone who doesn't. And as I said, during this part of the live chat, the live stream went nuts, right? Confusion. Anyways, Chris then said that they have completely rebuilt the mobiGlass again. They have planned a military Mobi mode and a civilian Mobi mode. In Squadron, the player will use the Mobi as a place to track how they're doing within the story. It will include references, communications, and other features. At the 2-hour mark, Jared indicated that they should sum up. And then Chris ended by saying that the game is a great challenge and thanked us for our support. And that's it.